If you're tired of not making progress and you're ready to be the artist you know you're meant to be, you're in the right place. You're listening to the Singer's Path podcast. The Path, or Performing Artists Training Hub, will cover everything, including singing tips that actually work, advice from top industry professionals, and life-changing mindset shifts. Out with the starving artist and in with the thriving artist. I'm your host, Sarah Bishop, professional singer, actor, educator, and entrepreneur. I'm not afraid to speak the truth and stop the gatekeeping of quality information so you can actually become the artist you dream of being. So let's get on the path, shall we? Even though we're all on our own journeys, it always helps to have a guide. Hello. Welcome back to the Singer's Path podcast. It's me, your host, Sarah Bishop. I just want to say, sorry that this hasn't been in a regular rhythm. I haven't purposely announced, a new episode every Monday because I honestly, for the love of God, don't always know when I'm going to record this because let's be so for real. It's a challenge to run a business and a podcast and be teaching and be doing a whole bunch of things and be selling and be making content. And did I already say that? I don't know because my brain has turned into mush. All of that to be said, doing all these things together. Oh, and keep in mind, it's always when I'm getting super busy in my business that I'll get 10 auditions, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say that, literally 10 auditions all in the same week. Again, not complaining. This is the dream, living the dream. And that may mean that sometimes my podcast episodes just kind of come out when they come out. So set that alert on your phone so you get that nice little reminder of when a new episode drops. So just putting this here, my sister Amanda did not audio edit this one, so if it sounds funky, that's why. But I wanted to make sure that I got my butt on here to talk about something that's really important, that's going to be leading to something very exciting later in June, and I just wanted to get these episodes going so that you knew about it, and we're kind of preparing you for said event. Today is part one of a series, this little mini series that I'm going to be doing all about belting. To belt or not to belt? That is the question, part one. Here's the thing about belting. It can be kind of controversial. So this is why we're doing this series, and I'm going to be breaking down maybe some misconceptions about it, and then I'm going to tell you again of that free event that we're going to be launching here soon and ways that you can learn more about what you need to do so that you can belt successfully. The first thing we're going to talk about today is why is belt so controversial? And again, some of this is, if I'm in all honesty, a little bit of a theory because of studying for so long and studying both classically and contemporary genres of music. And so I kind of just want to break into some maybe points and that things that I've noticed and accumulated from research and from learning to belt correctly and learning to teach people to belt correctly. Compared to classical studies of music, and maybe just some food for thought and maybe start some conversation about how we can start to get away from the fear, but also provide quality information so you guys don't feel so afraid. But this one is going to be a little bit about the fear mongering around belt and how that came to be and why. And again, some of this stuff is just observation from my own personal experience and some theories. And again, if you have more information on this, you are always more than welcome to send that to me at the email singerspath@gmail.com. That is the podcast email. That's how I'm going to hear from you guys in relation to this podcast. The other thing to keep in mind is if you have written a 5-star review, please email me with a screenshot and your email with your name on it, because I like to do a drawing. And I'm going to do it, I think, every quarter of people who leave reviews. So if you leave a review on the podcast or any of my other things that you have, if you have my Pillars course, or if you have Advanced Mix, you have Discover, whatever, any review you leave on any one of those products, including this podcast, you get an entry into getting a free lesson, right? So don't forget to do that. Don't forget to let me know it's you so that you count in that drawing, and then maybe we'll connect. But yeah, if you leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcast, just make sure to send it to me. So then you qualify for something free. So the first thing to bring up is, I think we all know this, but studying classical music and studying voice and training intensely, especially, the Western style of music, which is classical music derived mostly out of Europe, tends to be a little bit of a privileged thing to do, right? It costs a lot of money to take lessons privately, especially, but also over the many, many years that it takes to study something that intensely, and then also to go to school and receive higher levels of education for classical singing, specifically opera. Most people who perform professionally have their degrees, if not their bachelor's degrees, but also their master's degrees. And then they may or may not go on to perform at opera companies, or they begin to teach, or they're going to use their education in some capacity. But it just goes to show that in order to sing classically and to sing well, it requires a great deal of investment and a great deal of time. And yeah, it, I think, is reserved, not, it shouldn't be reserved, but I'm saying I think historically, it takes quite a great deal of privilege to be able to study something like that to that degree. And obviously people might take out loans to study, but like, I'm just saying it's like, you got to pay quite a pretty penny to be able to sing classically professionally. Now, that's not always the case. I have known people that just like naturally do it very well. And again, that's just like everything. Like there are like prodigies and everything. I've known people that just study with one teacher that teaches them their track in the opera world. Like I knew this bass singer who was part of like a local production that I did, who just found like the best bass teacher in the area or in the world, really. I think they had connection to them. And then this teacher basically like trained them to sing all of the bass roles that this person would be right for in the opera world. So he just like trained that way and then already knew everything and then just got like cast. So like everybody has their own path. But all this to say is that, you know, you got to train a lot, right? And so it's a little privileged, and especially in Western music, the way of singing, I feel, can sometimes in the classical field, historically, there's a little bit of a, like an othering complex of sorts. I don't know how to say this in a way that's like correct politically, but like, I feel like sometimes people who study for a long time, or historically, it's not like this so much anymore because of mainstream music becoming so popular, but sometimes there could be like kind of a superiority complex about classical singing and how it's superior to other versions of singing in other music. And I, in this first like debunking episode of like to belt or not to belt, like let's talk about it, is maybe some underlying possible racism and classism that possibly exists with maybe more traditional tribal ways of singing that's not necessarily classical music, but how higher institutions who have taught classical music may see that type of music as being better, as possibly more of a natural way of singing, such as belting, and we're going to get into it. So belting at its core, right, just pivoting away from the classical world for a second, belting at its core actually comes from calling, right? If we're really going to break it down into super layman's terms, it's more or less like fancy shouting. However, we don't want to shout in a way that's very strenuous, because then it makes it a little bit unsustainable and tiring. So if we're going to like be like classical world versus belting contemporary world, like it is definitely possible to belt incorrectly, and not from your like natural power and not harnessing your natural resonance, and pushing. And so the classical world tends to view belting as bad or dangerous. They also view chest voice as being bad or dangerous, or have been. This is not the most updated information, right? Like we've done research in studying and have realized that chest voice and belting are not dangerous, clearly, because artists do it their whole lives all over the world. But classically and historically, a lot of the fear, the first piece of fear that exists around belting, is that it's looked at as dangerous, as if there is no proper technique to doing it. And if you do it improperly, you know, you're a less than singer, or you're going to hurt yourself. Which, let's be clear, if you do it improperly, it isn't good for you and you could hurt yourself. However, the classical community, and again, this is a very broad kind of dated statement. I know a lot of classical people have researched it thus far, but previously, even when I was growing up, people looked at belting mostly because they didn't know how to do it and they weren't doing it correctly themselves, that they viewed it blanket statement as being something that is dangerous. It is dangerous for you to even try. And we're going to talk about how that's not the case necessarily, but it is important to find someone that actually does know how to do it right, to ensure that you're obviously not straining, you're not going to push and hurt yourself, but you are still allowed to practice this way of expression without being in fear. So again, the first reason why I think there is a charge from the classical community around belt is because it is derived more from tribal music. It is derived from wailing and crying, and it can be seen in blues music and jazz music, and especially in like American music. You know, it really has been prevalent in African American cultures, or just African cultures, right? Any other tribal Native American cultures, anything more indigenous usually has sounds like belting prevalent in their tribal music. And this is, again, just a theory. I could probably do more research on this. But just like a lot of things that have been westernized by colonialism, I think that is one of the most deep underlying thoughts surrounding belting as to why it's othered or why it's less than, and it's not right. And that's why I'm kind of talking about it, is because just because Western music or European music, that classical operatic, was seen as proper, was seen as correct, was seen as elite, it would make sense in conjunction with the rest of history how colonialism took over other indigenous cultures and obviously treated them very badly. African cultures, all of those things they took from them. It would make sense that they would taint those cultures' practices as being bad, or, you know, many as being not as elite as the very white European ways of expressing music. So that is just a theory I have, based on understanding that the classical world tends to be a little bit more conservative, based in colonialism. There's a lot of whiteness associated with a lot of the ways of singing, especially like the old Italian way of singing. Again, I'm not saying this is everyone. I'm just saying I think there is a little bit of colonialism present in that style of music, and that plays into the narrative that belting or singing other styles of music is inherently bad just because it's not classical. So I just wanted to say that and speak to that, and just get your thoughts going. Again, I don't have a whole bunch of research. I just know the communities and the history surrounding the music that would make sense as to how colonialism and how that kind of whiteness taking over other cultures has affected the world in other realms. Why would it be absent in music? The other reason why I think that fear around belting or developing any kind of contemporary way of singing, even though it's rooted actually in the most ancient and the most natural ways of singing, is because when someone learns to sing classically, they're actually learning to use slightly different ingredients to make their sound. Just like objectively, when you sing more classical music, you do tend to need more air, and you're going to move that air a little bit more. The vocal folds still need to work against the air, but they're going to lean against each other. That's not a very proper word of explaining that. I'll go into more detail. But basically, the vocal folds are going to work against the air less in comparison to the amount that the vocal folds come together and resist the air in belting or more contemporary music, if that makes sense. So in comparison, it's not that you shouldn't ever resist your air when you are singing classically. However, you tend to allow more air movement to happen, and there's less depth in the vocal folds compared to belting, right? So all of that to say is, like, that's just one example of an ingredient that if it's off is going to make it harder to switch and sing another style. And so if someone who has been trained classically and really is proud of their classical training and they rely on their classical training, but they use that same airflow and that lack of depth in the vocal fold, right? And they use that same volume of air and they try to belt, of course it's going to feel like shit, because they're going to feel like they're screaming, because they are. Right? One indication of screaming when you're belting is moving or blowing way too much air. And because classical singers, when they're singing classical music, need to do that, they do not realize that they can't do that same thing over when they're belting, right? So another thing we need to dismantle in this, why is this so controversial of to belt or not to belt, is that in the classical realm, and I'm just speaking from my experience. I know this isn't everybody, but I'm just saying there's sometimes in smaller spaces that are less educated or that have less access to more up-to-date pedagogy and training information, they look at singing as one size fits all. Oh, it's just singing technique. It's just singing technique. And the answer, my friend, is no, it's not. Especially when you're singing more advanced things like belting or singing classically. Like, those are very difficult styles to sing correctly and healthily. And they're also very hard to bounce back and forth from. Why? Because there are these ingredients that are different. So that is just one of the ingredients that's different, which is airflow and the way that the vocal folds are resisting the air. Now, again, we're not going to dive too much into, I'm not going to go through every single thing here exactly on this podcast. That is just one of the ways that belting is different in the way that you approach it. And it's the biggest reason that classical singers feel like they're screaming. So if you want to know more of that kind of information, like, oh my God, what is another difference in styles? Like, I'm a classical singer and I want to learn to belt and I felt like I was screaming. How do I move away from that feeling of overblowing? Or like, what else is in the sound that might be a little bit different? If that's you and that's bringing up those thoughts and that curiosity and like, hey, I would love a solution to this problem, then I want you guys to check out the free class that I'm giving on June 19th called Belt Like a Baddie. Guys, I'm so freaking excited for this class. It's going to be so lit. First of all, we are going to continue to talk about ways that why people are afraid of belting in this controversy that I'm kind of talking about today. Like, what has caused this underlying feeling of fear and this underlying feeling that you're going to hurt yourself inherently by trying to do it. And in this class, we're going to break those down. And then I'm basically going to be providing the 3 action steps you need to take to shift your brain, not just your brain, but to shift action so that if you have had it on your heart to want to sing and belt things and feel like you're confident in it and you're not going to hurt yourself and scream, we're going to be breaking down those 3 action steps in this class. So it's literally invaluable. I am so excited to be teaching this. Again, it's for free. The link is in the bio. You can come. It's a Zoom call. And I'm also doing a couple other very exciting things. It is Juneteenth that we're hosting it on. And I mainly picked that date because I cannot do any other dates in the month. Like, literally, I cannot. So in honor of Juneteenth, it's also Pride Month. There's a lot of things going on. Since it's also a free event, I'm going to be giving scholarships away because it's a very giving month. Again, June, we got Pride, we got Juneteenth going on. So I'll be giving away a little extra. Actually, I'm kind of in trouble with my business coach because they think I shouldn't be giving away this much. But again, it's a giving month. I want to give back to these communities. And yeah, it's going to be a great time. You're going to get great information. And this, what am I giving a scholarship to? You ask. Like, okay, I'm giving a scholarship to my sellout course, Advanced Mix, which literally teaches you the conditioning to be able to sing not just chest dominant mix and belting, but also head dominant mix. So it's a course that helps you do what we're kind of talking about today. It like literally actionably has the conditioning tools that professionals use to be able to sing both styles. So you can sing classical music or learn to start to sing classical music in this course. And you can also learn to pivot from classical music and move towards chest dominant mix, belting, mixed belting, all that kind of stuff that you've been dying to sing. So yeah, I'll be giving away a full scholarship to Advanced Mix and a half scholarship to Advanced Mix, and anyone can apply. And how you apply is you share one of my videos promoting the class on socials, okay? And then you need to tag me, okay? So you got to tag me at Sing with Bish so I see it's you, and share the sign-up link. And some of y'all have been sharing it, but you're just like putting the link, blasting it on the Instagram. I would advise that you check out on Instagram. You can actually just add a link with a button that you can see that I do it all the time in my stories, but I would advise you just like watch a video on how to add a link to one of your stories, but that's going to be the best way instead of just like copy pasting the text of the http://www. Like you can integrate it so that it's just a button. And basically it's to help to spread the class so more people can get this information, more people know about it. But that's the first step. So make sure you're sharing one of the posts at least one, or more is even better, promoting the class. Make sure you tag me so I know it's you, and make sure you're including the sign up link so your followers can see how to sign up and they can actually click the button and actually sign up. And the second step is to come to the class live, because although there will be a 48-hour replay, I know that everybody's in different time zones and sometimes they cannot make it because it's 3 a.m, and I totally get that. However, for this scholarship giveaway, you do have to be in live attendance to be qualified for that scholarship drawing, and we will be drawing it during the class, so that's why. So anyway, we're going to dive even more into this on June 19th as to what are other ingredients that make the sound different from classical singing to belting. And again, like I said, today I'll be kind of touching base with that fact that I think there's inherent colonialism, like white supremacy and racism, that exists within the old structures of this more classical way of singing and training. The way that it looks, classical singing historically has been perceived as the more proper, the better way of singing, but inherently is the more white way of singing, and how that plays into that superiority of the style, that it's better, or that all of that technique needs to translate, to every other way of singing. And how that kind of inherently harms and makes people afraid of belting and trying that, even though belting at its core is actually way more tribal. It is more automatic to our systems. Like, we actually do at the core of it know how to instinctually do it. It's really just about letting go of preconceived fear and ideas, because when you're afraid, you end up tensing up more. And it's also learning there's just like a little bit different ingredients that go into that sound. And obviously, if you apply the classical technique to belting fully, that is going to cause you to scream, right? So that's why belting has been looked at as screaming as well, because it's easy if you've been training classically then to not understand what the ingredients shift need to be in that sound, so that it doesn't sound or feel like you're screaming as much. Now, I'll be real. It does sound different. It feels different. Obviously, it's going to feel more intense, but it is a different sensation. It shouldn't tax you as much as it sounds like it would. So if you're losing your voice and, you really you're embarrassed, or you do feel like you're screaming, or that it's shrill or just not right, then I want you guys to make sure that you come to this Belt Like a Baddie thing. It's going to be free. We're giving away scholarships. It's a great time. You're going to connect with singers all over the world. I'm going to answer questions. Oh, I'm also going to coach people live on the call. Like, this is literally going to be an amazing event. It is going to sell out again. Like, literally, it's going to sell out. I've only been talking about it for 2 days. It already has 200 signups, which is amazing. And I'm so freaking excited, you guys. But just make sure that you don't miss out, because you're not going to want to. We're going to debunk more of this in part 2 of this podcast series. But I'm really excited to see you there. The link is connected below, but if you can't get it for some reason, just go to my socials, and to qualify for the scholarship, you know what to do. And with that, I'll see you, or rather, I'll talk to you next time. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. This helps me get this information out to more artists all over the world. Let's work together to spread the joys of music. Until next time, I'm your host, Sarah Bishop, signing off from the Singer's Path podcast. Thanks for listening.